Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. And we have awful news to start the show. I'm going to start it on a sad note just because I didn't want to think like that we're going to skip over this. But Dwayne Haskins has died in a traffic accident. I think it was Saturday morning at like 7 in the morning. Or was it Sunday morning? What day was it? I guess it doesn't really matter. He was in Florida doing a workout with teammates, I guess running backs and quarterbacks. I think they've been meeting down there for a while now at this part of the year. Kind of like off team activity, right?
Yeah, Trubisky actually, it was reported, had invited players down to where his house was down there, and they were working out together.
And they're still doing the investigation, but it looked like he had got out of his car on the highway and tried to cross. I don't even want to speculate. I don't know if he was trying to get something or what, but he ended up getting hit by a truck, like a dump truck or something. So, very sad news. I mean, he's only 20-something years old. So it's always like eye-opening whenever you're older than a player. Because like, I don't even know, we've never done a show. It's been a couple of years now we've been doing this podcast. And I don't think any active player has died, right?
No.
I mean, maybe the guy from the Angels, if he was still even in the league. I can't remember at that point when they're still doing the investigation into his drug thing. But that's the only one that I can think of that I remember talking about anyway. And the fact that it's on the Steelers with one of their guys where, if you're looking at their quarterback room, Haskins was the most talented guy in the room. I don't care what anyone else says. I saw him play against Michigan at Ohio State, and he tore it up. And he had the number one thing that the NFL looks for is like accuracy at some point. And so he had that down. I mean, if you go back and watch the Michigan game, he basically tore them up. And the Michigan defense with Don Brown, like, that's not a bad defense. They're one of the top defenses in the league. So to see him go out after, and I mean, even some of the people in like the media were like bringing up his football, like in the NFL, his career. It's like, why would you even bring that up?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't related to football at all. It was a tragedy. So prayers go out to his family. And was he married, or was it his girlfriend, his fiance? I know she was posting stuff. So she has to be devastated, I would think.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you're like coming into the season, you would think that he had a legit chance to win the starting job. I knew they brought in Trubisky, like you said, but
he was definitely in the mix.
Out of the three, I honestly think he's the most talented. So, in terms of passing, it looked like he was still learning some of the league, like offenses and stuff. And everyone knew that Ohio State kind of ran like a weird mix offense with Urban Meyer that didn't really translate into the NFL. So who knows if he would have been able to make that adjustment in a year or two. He got thrown into an awful situation at Washington. So, very sad news. I honestly couldn't even believe it. Because when you texted me at first and then I looked it up, I was like, nah, it can't be him. Because like it just didn't make any sense. So still hit me pretty hard. So hopefully that, I don't even know. Hopefully just prayers and stuff out to his family. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on.
No, it was a tough situation, and hopefully his family finds some peace.
And we're going to talk about like the Steelers draft like we normally do, but just doesn't seem right. So we're going to go ahead and skip that this week. Maybe hit it back up. Is the draft? It's not this week, right? It's like a couple weeks from now.
Yes.
So we'll have some time. We'll circle back around, but too soon to talk about that stuff on the show. Changing topics to our other big one. A very big conspiracy here with my man Tom Brady. I don't know where this came from. It came from the Brian Flores like lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
So someone put together this conspiracy that Tom Brady retired on purpose so that he could become an executive with the Dolphins, which would void his contract, and then he would go ahead and be able to sign as a player, right?
I think, unless they were offering some type of like, the only way that this even it's so outlandish that the only way that it makes sense is if they were doing like you're going to have partial control of the team. Like, you're going to have some ownership in it so that when you retire, you can still go into the front office almost like a John Elway-esque type situation.
Well, see, the thing for me that, and I know, like, Tom Brady, and for those that don't know, like, Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, like, Stephen Ross is the biggest donor to Michigan athletics, I believe. So him and Tom Brady, like, they have a connection. So I'm not shocked at all if they were working on a deal or whatever, or were friends off the field. Like I said, I've seen Tom Brady. He's been at games I've been at Michigan. And so, like, and he even came over and, like, talked. That's why, like, I'm a big fan of his, just because he's been there. He's been, like, I've kind of met him, not like in person, but as part of, like, the group, he came over and talked and stuff. So I would say that there's got to be something to it, but I don't think the timeline lines up, and I'll tell you why. Because I think what they're drawing from is the Flores lawsuit, where he talks about them bringing Tom Brady onto the boat. I don't think that was this year, though. Right?
I don't think.
I think it was 2 years ago whenever he signed with the Bucs originally. Because he was a free agent. It's still considered tampering, because I think in the lawsuit, when we first read it, it talked about, like, whatever that opening day is, like in March or wherever, where they can talk with other teams. It seemed like they were meeting before that, kind of like off the cuff, and that was one of the things that Flores pushed back on. So I'm almost wondering if this was kind of leaked from the Flores camp to kind of get him off of that, because it kind of seemed weird where you're going to go to an off-season meeting with your owner. Tom Brady's there, they're like friends, and that people have pointed out, like, it's not like he's meeting with some other quarterback he didn't know. Like, he knew him. And if Tom was really kind of just like there and leaving or whatever, I don't think it was as big a deal as what he made it. So when I read that, I thought that definitely made Flores look bad. And so now I wonder if this new rumor is kind of just like a leak to just add smoke to that, to kind of make it not seem as bad for him. Right?
Yeah.
Because the way he read it was like, hey, he comes out to meet the owner of the Dolphins, and as soon as he gets there, he just like, Tom Brady's here, blowing this up. And he like made a scene and left, right? With your boss for like an event. So like, if you're reading that, you're like, oh yeah. Could you imagine like if you went to your employer, Matt, and like you just saw someone there? I mean, maybe it is against NFL rules or whatever, but still like the way you can just peacefully just be like, hey, I'm just going to step out or whatever. But I don't know. I don't believe it. Maybe there was a plan for him to go to the Dolphins at one point, but if he's coming back at what age, 45? Like, he's old. I talk about him being a contender, but he is old. It's not that far-fetched that he's going to have a season where he looks like Peyton Manning rubber-arming it out there. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised that he could even throw downfield last year. So if one year he came out and he couldn't do that, I'd be like, oh, about time. How old is this guy? Like, there's a reason, like, Julio Franco only pinch hit after a while. Like, when he was playing in his mid-40s in baseball, because he couldn't throw the ball. When you're, like, 50 years old, your arm's falling apart. So, you're out there doing your thing, but that's going to be it. And so that's what I think, like, with Tom Brady. I don't know. If they have, like, proof of this, it's going to be even crazier. But, like, the other piece that they threw in there was Sean Payton, which is weird. Because the way that the Saints made that move with like their trades now, that was kind of lining it up for 2023, I thought. So like then if you're talking about that timeline, like with Sean Payton have retired, I don't know how his contract situation came out, because did he coach last year or no? When did he retire? Did he take a full year off already?
He just retired at the end of the season.
Yeah, so I don't think he would have been able to just sign another contract, right? So like the conspiracies are all like super weird. I don't think you could just retire to get out of a contract, because players would do that all the time. Could you imagine how many times LeBron would have retired?
I feel like he was retired this year.
Well, I mean, you may be getting to that point. They threw my man Juwan Howard out there too, as possibly LeBron trying to lure him out to the Lakers to be head coach, because they're buddies with the Heat. He was like the player coach, remember, because he played for 100 years. He was like must be a Michigan thing. You play for like 100 years, you just become the coach on the bench. Tom Brady, Juwan in Miami, right? Because he was with the Heat when he did that. He's just there. You just stay there and then you just become the coach, and then maybe you come back and coach Michigan at some point. Which wouldn't that be funny if Tom Brady like coached for the Dolphins and then he's like, I got to go coach Michigan now. I would think enough people love him now after he stayed for a long, because he went through the villain phase. Now he's at the phase where he's like, a lot of young people that are fans are like, he's like as old as their dad. So he's like, man, I wish my dad could be out there playing football like that.
But see, he went from cold New England down to warm Florida. Why would he go back to Michigan?
Because that's just what happens, man. That's a cycle. That's what Juwan Howard did. Miami comes back to Michigan. Jim Harbaugh, who knows where he was at San Francisco. Out west, comes back to Michigan. You never know. I mean, he could also be awful as a coach.
It just snowed this weekend here in Pennsylvania. There's nothing about being up in the north that's enjoyable right now.
I figured you would have that because I think it always snows around the same weekend because it's like spring game down here, and it was freezing cold, so I didn't end up going. Because I woke up, it's like 30 degrees or something. I was like, are you kidding me?
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to go out. I think it probably did warm up, but it was still like 40 or 50. And I thought, it's a spring game. There's not going to be that many people there, so it's not like you can get that huddle warmth. Like at a Penn State or Michigan game in like the regular season where there's like 100,000 people there. So it's like, I'll sit this one out. I'll watch it on the old TV. So that's my thing. I don't know. Anything else like from your perspective that could make this a legit rumor at this point?
I mean, for as hard as Miami was shopping the quarterbacks around and trying to bring somebody in, if the owner is as hard of a Michigan guy as you're saying, it's not a complete rule out that he wouldn't go after him or try to put a run in to see what the interest level would be. But I mean, there were a lot of factors. I think that when you look at the Dolphins, like I think you would have had to play New England twice. That, I mean, I don't know that you want to do that, knowing what they had already had and game planning for. I don't know. Like to me, going into Tampa, where the quarterback play was a lot worse with the other franchises, like it made sense for him to go to the NFC. So I think there might have been a little bit of smoke there, but I don't know that there's enough to catch on. Plus, I think it's helping his case knowing that he signed with Pittsburgh and is continuing to play. So it's not like he's being completely outside. Like he's not being completely blacklisted from the league.
So I'm looking up the timeline here. So Flores comes in as a Dolphins coach in 2019. After the season, Tom Brady's a free agent. That first season, he ended up going 5-11. I almost guarantee that was the year that they met with Tom Brady. Right? You come in, you're the new coach. You just had an awful season, and the owner's like, "Hey, do you think we should get Tom Brady?" That's probably how the conversation went. And then the coach was like, against league rules, and he started freaking out, which probably freaked out the owner into being like, well, I can't get Tom Brady now. This guy, who knows what he's going to start throwing allegations around. So then 2020, 2021, and then he's gone. And now Tom Brady's looking around. It just doesn't make sense that it would happen now. Now, I think to make it seem like it was this year, that's when you bring in the Sean Payton thing. Because I'm going to look up him real quick. That's the one where he just doesn't really fit to me in that situation. Because Drew Brees still would have been there. Like Drew Brees was in. Didn't they go pretty far that year that Tom Brady came in and won the Super Bowl? Didn't he beat him?
Yeah.
So like that's the one that doesn't make sense. Yeah, Sean Payton coached this year. So maybe his contract was up. I don't know.
Yeah, because he ended up having like 6 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, so it's already on his wiki. The Dolphins were considering pairing Peyton with Tom Brady, who had briefly retired from the NFL. Plans were scrapped after Brian Flores filed his lawsuit. But see, even if he filed his lawsuit, what would that matter, right? That's the one thing that also doesn't match up. Like, what would the lawsuit do? Not let you have a year with Tom Brady? If Tom Brady and Sean Payton both went there, then what? Right?
I don't know.
So the Dolphins had requested to interview him, and they were denied permission. So they were denied. Like, I think the Saints would still have to sign off on it. And that's what I'm saying. Like, if Tom Brady was coming there and they like had the deal worked out, I really don't think it was a plan, as everyone's making it seem like it was set in stone. Because the Peyton thing, he'd still have to be cleared. You can't just retire and go to a new team. They would have had to trade him or work out a deal. I don't know what his contract was. But the entire thing, and the fact that people are just writing it as fact, is just crazy to me. Like, it's like the Barry Bonds thing all over again. They're like, hey, he tested positive for steroids. They're like, well, where are the tests? Oh, well, he's not on the test, but these other guys are, these Yankees. And they're like, oh, shit, Alex Rodriguez is on here for real? Well, we'll just keep focusing on Barry Bonds because we already wrote that story, though. And so then like they just ignore everything else, and it's like, oh, David Ortiz? Oh, yeah, he's getting shot, like doing all this weird stuff. But that's a Hall of Fame guy if I've ever seen one, right? Definitely not on the steroids or anything. So it just cracks me up. So now, like, some sports writers put this story out there, and then that now, like, even Wikipedia has it on as fact, and that's going to go ahead and just it's going to stick. But who knows? I don't believe it, to be honest. Like, they would, like, for them to work it out. Like, why would Tom Brady even be talking to Sean Payton? Right?
Hey, I wanted to run my own. Like, at this point, he has his own system, so like, it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah, that's the one thing, too. You're right. Tom Brady runs the offense. That's why he wanted Arians gone. That's why that rumor makes sense. Bruce Arians was still butting heads over him all year over the way the offense was going. And so finally, he's like, you know what? I'm just doing my own thing. And that's it. And then they got rid of Arians. So, like, you're telling me he's butted heads with the offensive guy, and he decides, you know what I need? I need another guy that runs a different offense just like that, Sean Payton. Because it's not like Drew Brees. I mean, maybe Drew Brees was running the whole offense, but that goes against the offensive guru title everyone throws on Sean Payton then. Like, you can't have both, Matt. You can't have the wicked flexibility, or you can't have the offensive guru. They don't go together. Like, it's like when the Broncos brought in Peyton Manning, and everyone knew he was running the offense, and I guarantee that's why the Niners didn't get him with Harbaugh. Because I guarantee Harbaugh came in, and Harbaugh's like, I used to be a quarterback. I'm going to call the offense. They probably had that exact exchange, Matt. Probably went just like that. If you think I'm crazy, like, read some of the comments. Like, Peyton Manning said, like, Harbaugh was throwing footballs with them, and like came and was like eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or something. Peyton Manning is like, hey, I thought I was coming in here and I just had the job. And then Harbaugh learned from him, and he did that with the Vikings this year. He came in and he's like, hey, I thought I had the job. And I'll be honest, like, I was talking to, like, I don't know if I mentioned this last week, but I was talking to some Dolphins fans. The rumors down there, when I was in Florida last week, or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, they thought that Harbaugh was coming to Miami because of the Ross connection. And, like, his pockets are deep, Matt. The business school of Michigan is named after him. When I started there in 2013 for grad school, he donated $2 million. I think 100 was for athletics and 100 was for the business school or whatever. Then he did another $6 million here, another $50 million in 2017. Like, dude, he just keeps donating money. His name's on the school. So there's a big connection there. He probably knows all those guys. He probably knows Harbaugh. They're probably good friends. Like, you just don't donate that much money if you don't know the players, right? It's like whenever you hear they're
trying to get out of jail.
No, which this can be our sidebar because we have a lot of NFL stuff. But I saw a thing that was like trending on Twitter or whatever, where they were saying, like, what university, if you had like a sister school, what would be the closest school to your school. So, like, if I'm looking at Michigan, there's only one answer. It's Texas. What other school has donors just hanging out, calling plays? Like, Matthew McConaughey's there. Like, we talked about Michigan's, like, signing day. Ric Flair's there. It's like, what the hell is going on? So, that's what I was thinking. And, like, there's no other answer. That's it. You come in, you get the Heisman's going. Heisman talk. You're back. Oh, Michigan's back. Then finally they are back in the playoffs, and they still get smoked. But Texas is like getting beat by Kansas. So it's really sad to see our sister school in Orange down there having some issues. But Matt, I wanted to get your thoughts. What did you think Florida State school would be? What school is closest to Florida State in terms of like fans and history and stuff like that?
I don't even know.
I know I didn't give you any preview because I forgot about this. It just came back into my head. Well, they were a women's school, right? So you have to look for other women's schools out there.
All right, I'm ready for it. What do you got?
I don't know any. That's why I'm trying to give you hints because like they didn't come on till long. It'd have to be what Miami's kind of a private school. I don't think they're a women's school, but their timelines with Florida State kind of matched up, didn't they? Both not relevant until like the 80s or 90s. And then have struggles. Miami's had struggles for longer, though, let's be honest. Florida State's are only a little bit more recent.
But it does put into perspective, like, for as often as Miami has said that they're back, like, they've been stinking for a decade, or for 2 decades now. It's been like 20 years since they've been, like, truly winning. They've only won the Coastal once, which is the lesser of the 2 conferences in the ACC since they came in. They've made it to the
ACC they were just in the championship game.
And they got curb stomped by Clemson. Like, they only made it once.
That's why I was really worried about Michigan in the championship game this year. That could have been us. Winning it, finally. I mean, we had some shared titles, Matt, though. You got to count those. If Ohio State counts them when they really don't need to, then by God, Michigan should be able to count them.
Well,
in Miami,
Miami's not even close, and they should at least you know, for as much trash as people talk, Paul Johnson's flex bone off. They were losing to a team that throws the ball 3 times a game and couldn't beat them to get to the ACC championship.
And to be honest, as much as I joke about the ACC about how weak it is, there's no way that Pitt should be able to come in and be the cream of the crop. Like Miami, the ACC perception is down because Miami's down. Like the Big Ten, everyone's kind of like, oh, Wisconsin's pretty consistent, or Iowa here and there. Like that's good for the Big Ten. But like, let's be real. They brought Nebraska in to be that Wisconsin program. So when Nebraska looks like shit, then the Big Ten West looks like shit. Same with the ACC. When the Coastal doesn't have Miami, they pretty much gift wrap them the conference title with that weird division. They're like, here, you guys are going to just start winning football titles. And they were like, joke's on you. We're not even trying. So we'll take the CC schedule, and you're going to have to get our old buddies Pitt from the Big East back in here to win some titles.
And I'm going to have to just say that you're on crack if you think like between Miami and Pitt, like they both should be competing on that side, but clearly like it's been Florida State's show and then Clemson's as they've fallen off at the end of the Bowden regime.
Yeah, but that was set up directly so that because Clemson wasn't even anything either. When those divisions came in, they wanted Florida State, Miami. The Big Ten tried to do the same thing with Michigan and Ohio State, and then got rich rotted. And then with the scandals, they decided, well, we need to just switch these divisions up because they thought Penn State was going to fall off. And luckily for them, it kind of worked out where they were able to balance it back in. And I'm not saying anything like I think Pitt should be able to compete, but I think they should be more as like on an Iowa level where Miami should be what Wisconsin is, where they're winning the conference or the division every year. And then I think like Pitt or Virginia Tech even should be like the Iowa where, hey, every 3 or 4 years, they're going to go close to undefeated. Like they're going to get their guys in, they become seniors, and they hit a run. And that's not happening. That's not happening at all. It's like, oh, well, every team in the that division wins it Could you imagine if the Big Ten did that and like Rutgers and Maryland were winning it? People would be like, what is going on? Like, you can't tell, like, how are they beating Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State? Like, it just wouldn't, people wouldn't be able to comprehend it if all 7 teams won that division in a 7-year span, like which happened in the ACC Coastal. Like, that's a real thing that happened. So you look at it and you're like, oh, well, okay. I guess that just doesn't make sense because the division is Duke, Georgia Tech, Miami, North Carolina, Pitt, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. Out of those, you have Georgia Tech that's kind of like the older, like other most successful school that kind of just, who knows what's happened to them. I don't know how they can't capitalize on Georgia recruiting. They don't need to run the option. They really don't. And they should use their academics as like Notre Dame and like Stanford. If Stanford can compete with a regular pro offense, there's no reason with Georgia Tech being in Georgia near Atlanta that they can't put together a competent recruiting class to at least win the Coastal, mind you. They can finish behind Georgia and Auburn and Alabama and all those other schools that come into Georgia and even Clemson. But how are they losing to like Duke and Virginia and North Carolina? Like North Carolina's coming back with Mac Brown, but they haven't even been that good recently. So if you're looking at that division, it was basically gift wrapped to Miami where they said, look, we're not going to put you, we could easily put you on the side with Clemson and Florida State, but we're going to give that side Syracuse and Boston College for some reason. And that reason is we want you to play Florida State in the ACC championship game, and it's never happened. It's never happened. I don't know when it would happen, like realistically. So like until that does happen, then I think that the ratings are, and like the ACC perception is going to stay down. Like they need to strong Miami, or I've been hinting at it. They just need to bring Notre Dame in. If they can get Notre Dame in to make that that division already have like a contender in terms of like recruiting and making the playoffs and stuff, then I think that would balance it out.
But honestly, I don't even know that it's going to, bringing in Notre Dame would do anything to it, because Notre Dame has done nothing in the college football playoff. Like if they lost, I would almost argue it would be something if they got to the championship game and they lost on like a last second fluke field goal or some kind of like where it was a 1-score possession, or like the way not this past playoff, but the one previously where Alabama and Georgia played, and it was like a back and forth game where at the end, like there was a little bit of credibility to it. Like I can almost understand that, but like Notre Dame makes it into the playoff and then gets absolutely destroyed. Like,
did you see the USC trash talk?
So, like, what do you do? What do you do in that situation? Like, if Notre Dame comes in to the ACC and then you make the playoff and then you lose by 60, what's everyone saying? Oh, the ACC sucks. Like,
no.
You gain no credibility by losing by 60 to
Matt,
the SEC program.
I'm telling you, you won't lose that credibility because they're going to be the Florida or previously the Georgia of the ACC. Like they should be the Big Ten's in the same dilemma right now because Nebraska hasn't showed up.
But Georgia for years has not been able to get over the hump, and it was just like there was always some excuses to why Georgia was okay. It was like they did nothing. Like they weren't good since the 80s. Weren't relevant since the 80s, and they're just like, yeah, Georgia, they're a top program.
That's because they were making the championship game and then winning their bowl game. And they would go a nice, quiet 10-3 or whatever it was, 11-2. And so, like, that's what Miami needs to do. They should beat their division. But then, like, even then, like, South Carolina was winning that division, and so was Missouri when they came in. I just don't know what Miami needs to do. Like, the ACC can't say, hey, we're going to give you an even easier schedule. Like, who do you want us to get rid of? Pitt, Virginia Tech, maybe Virginia, North Carolina. We'll switch back in Boston College and Syracuse. But even them, Boston College and Syracuse have been better than Miami in some of the recent years. So it's like, oh, that won't even help you. So I don't know what we can do to help you out, Miami. But they need to figure it out, Matt. NILs, I
don't think that they
need to start paying players and figuring it out.
I'm being hard on the ACC right now, but they're not as hard pressed as like what a lot of the Western side of the United States schools are, like the Pac-10, Pac-12, Big 12, Mountain West, like all those schools out west, conferences out west, like they're not having issue. But I mean, when you're trying to compete for the bigger market contracts, you're contending with the Big Ten and you're contending with the SEC, and I just don't think that the SEC's gobbling up a bunch of schools now has solidified that they're going to reign supreme. And for as recognizable as the Blue Bloods are, the Big Ten, I think the ACC can compete with them on a lot of the sports, but they're just not going to ever get that same sense of credibility.
Oh, the Big Ten, they can't win national championships in sports that matter. Like I told you in basketball, I don't know why they can't figure it out. Even in like women's basketball, like they're letting South Carolina come in, and even like Connecticut, like they bring in Maryland, like, hey, we're going to give you the money and the resources, step up and win, and winning lacrosse and all that stuff. Like that's great. But at some point, you need to come together. Even in hockey, which I was going to bring up as my final bell, it's frustrating to watch Michigan get another sport where they make it to the Final Four. They're more talented, and they don't get the calls like Duke. Like, Matt, the other team got no penalties the entire game. Like, Michigan had no power plays. And I had people texting me, like, why aren't they calling any penalties on Denver? I'm like, I don't know. Because if this was Duke, it was like they were taking the Duke argument where, well, they have to call, like, the Duke guys are just so much bigger and stronger and, like, more athletic that there's going to be fouls on every play. You hear that, right, Matt? So then, like, the Michigan guy gets tackled, or, like, they give him the old slew foot. They trip him. And they're like, not really. I mean, if that guy's more athletic, he should have just been able to skate around that. It's like, what are you talking about? You can't just trip the guy. And of course, by some miracle, Michigan takes it to overtime and then loses it. But on the other side, Minnesota, the other Big Ten power, gets blasted. I think, or maybe they didn't get blasted, but I thought it was like 4-1 or something. It's like, show up. And I said before, the only way the Big Ten is going to win a championship in basketball is if they have both teams in the championship game. Because, like, for whatever reason, the commissioner doesn't come up and say, like, whatever. What was the sport last year? Michigan got the same thing. Was it women's field hockey or something? They make it to the national championship game, and they get, like, no penalties called in their favor. And it's like penalties were like 5 or 3-0 or something like that. Very similar to hockey. It's like, all right, well, it's going to be tough to overcome all those power plays, you know? At some point, you're just going to be like, you're going to say that's not my day. And then you come back at it and then get in the letter after. Like after the Big Ten, like what was the 2013 where Trey Burke blocked that Louisville guy? And after the fact, they're like, yeah, we shouldn't have called a foul on him to give Louisville the 5-point lead. Like Michigan should have had the ball with a chance to tie the game. Not saying Michigan would have won, but whenever you just call a foul for no reason and then give the other team the win, that kind of just takes the air out, you know? So I think some of it has to be like they just have to, the Big Ten needs to start being like the SEC where they're in the ear of everyone saying like, yo, our teams are better. Why aren't you calling the fouls on it? Like there's no reason Michigan has like 5, NFL, or I think they had 7 first round NHL draft picks. And like they didn't get the respect of the refs where it's like, oh yeah, well we thought their guy would have been able to get around that trip, you know? You know, Matt, they should have been able to skate around that. Could you imagine if they did that with Zion Williamson back in the day? Like, oh yeah, he should have just been able to jump over that block. What are you talking about? People would have been losing their shit. Coach K would have had an aneurysm on the court. He would have retired 3 years early. So I just don't understand it. And that's the Big Ten's problem. And like you said, Texas and Oklahoma, let's be honest, who cares about Oklahoma? They got Texas. That was the crown jewel, other than Notre Dame. And the Big Ten let them take it. So now we're waiting to see, because as of before that deal came in, the Big Ten's been making more money than the SEC with their TV deal. The Big Ten's is up. Was it this year? Did I say? It's either this year or next year. Like they're already negotiating for like maybe 2025 or something. And I told you that Apple TV is supposed to be interested. And I don't even know if we circled back around on this, but Apple TV announced that they are doing Major League Baseball games now And a lot of the people that said that they dismissed the Big Ten rumor saying, oh, Apple TV, they're just going to show like replays of like the Big Ten's history. No, it's not true. I think Apple TV is doing at least one live Major League Baseball game every Friday if you pay for their like $5 a month TV channel. And that's all I want. All I want is one channel that you log in. I don't care if it's Apple. And if it's $5 a month, that's a hell of a deal. Because how many other networks are like, you paid the $5.99 for it, ACC network, Matt? I still can't watch any NC State games. They're all blacked out.
Well, don't even get me started about ACC coverage of stuff, because the spring game was a train wreck.
That's why I'm hoping that this works out, because I think if the Big Ten gets a deal, it's going to help everyone. Because like I don't mind watching Florida State, Pitt, NC State, like the ACC schools around here, even North Carolina. But whenever I can't because everything's blacked out, it's like, how are you making ACC fans? Because you're directly competing now with South Carolina and Georgia winning national championships in football, and these schools coming back around. And whenever kids are growing up, even if they're growing up near North Carolina, if the games aren't on TV, they're not going to be a fan of North Carolina. Right? That's why I said the same thing growing up. The reason I'm a Braves fan, TBS had all of the Braves games on. The Pirates weren't really on TV because they sucked. So you couldn't watch them unless you paid for, like, what was it, Root Sports back in the day? So you had to like pay for the extra channel. And guess what? If you didn't have that channel and your parents only had like the 20 cable or whatever it was, TBS was one of them. So you watched the Braves or the Cubs. And so I know a lot of people that were either Braves fans or Cubs fans, because Cubs fans were on like the Chicago 9 channel or whatever it was. And that's it. So you're telling me that all these people in North Carolina growing up, they can't watch ACC football or anything because it's all blacked out, but they sure as hell can watch the SEC or the Big Ten. They're going to pick one of those teams. I guarantee it. So I'm hoping that this Apple TV deal does go through, and the ACC then looks at it and says, well, we definitely need to have all of our games on there. No more blackouts. Because that should have been done 2 commissioners ago. They're like the only one that has like the blackouts. The Big Ten's problem right now is that Fox has like 6 different apps. So you have to figure out where the games are, and you can never find them. So if Fox just made one Fox Sports app, I don't think it would be as bad. But having Big Ten Plus, Big Ten Extra, Big Ten, Fox Sports, and then just the regular Fox app, it gets a little crazy, Matt. Same with the basketball. People are like, hey, ratings are doing well for college basketball, but some of the games didn't do as well. It's like, yeah, because some were on like True TV, TBS, TNT, and like you turn on one, you watch part of the game, but it goes to Impractical Jokers or whatever. I'm like, who's showing me this? Why are you showing me this? Plus, even the hockey game, I said the Michigan game went to overtime. It was on ESPN. Guess what? They cut to preseason baseball, Matt. Or what? I guess it was like the pregame show. And so you couldn't even watch overtime. I had to watch it in Spanish. It was on the ESPN Deportes. Is where they moved it, because it was like on some ESPNU, but then you had to have a special subscription, which of course I don't have. So I'm like, now this is almost like I'm watching ACC. Watching the Big Ten hockey on the ESPN was like watching, I guess it wasn't Big Ten hockey, it was the NCAA hockey, but that's my sidebar rant. But going back to my original question, who do you think the sister school for Pitt would be?
Maybe Stanford.
They don't have the championship history. Maybe you mean Yale?
There you go.
Pitt has those 9 championships. I thought maybe Georgia Tech. They don't run a weird offense, but they also don't recruit as well as what they could, I think. Not really sure in terms of that. You could always go West Virginia, both kind of wandering in the desert now. I saw Pitt fans. What was it? I was watching something. It was like, hey, what's the best memory of like Pitt football in your lifetime? And someone said 13-9. I'm like, the best memory is upsetting West Virginia when you had a crap season yourself. Like, that's a great memory, but like, don't you guys have any like winning ones? Like, how about winning the ACC or whatever? Like, I get it. Like, I could see like App State saying that, like, yeah, the win over Michigan still. It's not like being ranked or like finishing in the top 10 or anything. But that was just so Pitt to me to hear someone say that. I was like, you got to be kidding me. What about Penn State, though? Who do you think they're most like?
I have no idea. Like, this is so bizarre.
You don't think about that?
No.
You don't think about what schools are close to another school?
You need to get a life or a hobby or something.
The show, Matt. That's the hobby. What are you talking about?
Gee, you sit there and just daydream about stuff to randomly throw at me. Thanks.
Well, hold on, because you did your own research on Penn State. Didn't you see the other scandal that ESPN cooked up on them? Which
because you sent me a novel.
So they tricked me because ESPN put in a story about how Joe Paterno had another predator that he let roam Penn State, and I thought, oh, what's this about, you know? So I click it thinking it's going to be like a little, you know how they always get their story from the AP Newswire where it's like a couple lines, and instead,
oh no, it's something that's going to take you some time.
Well, as soon as I scrolled and I saw like the header that did like the transformation from like the text to the picture, I knew that it was one of like their E60 or whatever they called. What do they call them? Stories. So I think they might be doing a documentary on it. I could be wrong, but I think that every time they have one of those, they kind of do like their expose first to gauge interest. And the way that went pretty viral. But they had a player that was convicted of rape, but he kept getting out of prison. The story was very, very long. So I had to kind of do my research on the side because I wasn't going to read the entire thing. So, but the entire time I thought, why now? Like, why are you bringing up the story now? Did someone write that 10 years ago? When was the original scandal? It was around 10 years ago, right? Like, it's been such a long time that ESPN running it as a headline, and I brought it up before the show just to kind of see where it was. Matt, it's still on their front page. Like, if you sign in, it's like there's like a big story here. Oh man, I scrolled. It's because before Jerry Sandusky, the untold story of the most dangerous player in college football history. And it's in between a bunch of stories about the NBA playoffs and Major League Baseball's like opening week best. So I'm like, they're still promoting it like it's the biggest story of all time. I don't understand it.
I almost for as long of a length as they went writing the story, they could have just did a 30 for 30 for it and probably gotten more publicity. Because I think a lot of people are going to just. I was looking for the setup in it that you sent it to me. I'm like waiting for where's going to be this gotcha. Instead, you hit me with the you sent me all down that rabbit hole just to throw random. Who do you think this school looks like? Questions.
Well, I could have sent you that. So you could have made your pick, or I could have sent you a story so that you could share your thoughts on
novel.
It. But it's so long, and it's from the 70s,
which I think makes it a lot more challenging too. Because when a lot of these, like the trials and stuff for Todd Hodney were going on, that was the player from Penn State. That was right as Paterno was starting to build Penn State into what it currently is now. So he's in the middle of this championship run, and there's these allegations that it wasn't the ways of proving as conclusively as there are now.
But why are they focused on Penn State? Because that's my only thing. Because like I know Michigan had scandals, Ohio State had scandals, Michigan State had scandals. What about LSU's big scandal? They're like, why aren't they investigating those? Those are like the LSU one is the most recent and the most active, right? Like it's still ongoing. The FBI is involved from the basketball side. Coach O's gone from the football side.
But but they're not going to press those ones because that's going to force the NCAA to have to actually just make a decision on something, and they're not going to want to actually do any kind of serious disciplinary action. Well,
so if you get all the way to the bottom of that story, which was very, very long, they're still collecting tips. It says if you have information about any of these crimes, email Todd or Paula, I'm cutting their last names out, at ESPN, or call in tips and they give their number. They're looking for sexual violence in State College during the 70s and 80s. Like, why would they be looking into that? Like, it's ESPN, you're a sports paper. Like, I get it if you're trying to do, like, if the AP or something, you're doing it. But, like, it was 10 years ago. You guys could have been looking for this 10 years ago with the Joe Paterno stuff. That's what I don't understand. But yet they cover Penn State so heavily from, like, just a negative point that, I'm not a Penn State fan by any means. It's like, but to me, it's kind of shocking where it's like, hey, what about this LSU thing? Or, like, even the UNC scandal where they were on academic probation. I think that's like one of the biggest schools to ever be on academic probation. And it's kind of like, oh, a footnote. It's like, oh, here. And I saw some interview with like one of the AP people, and they were like, why don't you cover so-and-so story? And they were like, condescendingly said, like, I just didn't think that would be interesting. And that's how I feel like there's like has to be a personal thing here where they don't think the other one's interested, but they're going to try to dig up this other weird story and then make it interesting by making it 30 pages long. So I feel bad for Penn State, and I wish other schools that had their scandals ongoing were looked at as closely as what people are investigating. Penn State saying when Joe Paterno's dead. He's been dead. Like, I don't understand why you keep going after the guy. Like, people already made their decision on him. They're like, that's it, man. That's it. Like, what do you want them to do? Like,
well, I like that they were trying to press the kids too for their quotes, and one of them was like, "I was 6 when that happened, so I don't know what you want me to say."
Yeah, it's almost like they're still mad that Penn State football's still going on, but like I said, you have real cases at Baylor and other universities that they're kind of just like, oh, well, they changed coaches. Well, guess what? So did Penn State. Joe Paterno's not there. You're really hurting James Franklin's program. And it's kind of like, all right, well, I mean, he has to be close, but I guarantee if Harbaugh gets negatively recruited about all his NFL stuff and the weird like milk drinking and stuff, I guarantee that this comes up as negative recruiting against Penn State every single year. So, and I'm not saying like for or against it. I'm just saying, why Penn State? What about the other scandals that are ongoing that we haven't heard of for like 4 years? What about Kansas just won a basketball championship? Whatever happened with them paying players? Their coach is still there. How come Will Wade had to get fired? Kansas guy's still there. The Kansas is named in every document in that paper. They're named with the Adidas rep. He's giving offers. They had an offer to Zion Williamson from Kansas. They have proof of it. Bill Self's still coaching there. No big deal. But then they're going to go back and look for tips from 1970 and State College. Great work, ESPN. That's why people look at it and it's like, all right, well. And then ESPN's like, we don't know why our subscriber base is going down. But that's it. Changing topics back to the NFL. The XFL has partnered with the NFL. They're also getting sued by, was it Megan Rapinoe?
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce her last name?
Close enough.
I don't know. Because I always hear about her with like the soccer team, but it's like, okay, they had their Together, but in Together they had an X in it for some reason, replacing what, the E? And they try to say that the XFL, the X in the XFL look too close to theirs because the XFL also used the word together, which they were trying to do like football together with their NFL partnership, right?
Yeah.
And so they were like, Megan said that they're going to do a cease and desist on that. And they want to try to do, and I like the initiative that they're trying to push for because they want the NFL players to have a place to go. And I'm curious to see if this actually sticks. But the way the salaries and stuff works for like retirement, I'm wondering if they're going to try to get the XFL to kind of count towards that. Because I want to say Major League Baseball, like once you hit the majors, if you end up going back to the minors, there's usually like a limit or whatever. But I think that if you're going back and forth, I think they count as like your years of service. So like if a guy's going back, instead of getting cut from the NFL, never to be seen again, he could go to the XFL, jump back to the NFL, and keep tacking on retirement pay from the NFL, which I think is a hell of a deal if they are able to work it out. And I think it's one of the things that's often overlooked because you always hear about like, oh, a player was 1 year away from getting like that NFL healthcare for life. And it's like, oh yeah, well, man, if only there was like an XFL there for him to bounce back at, or rehab after some so-and-so injury, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that it comes together. And I really didn't like the minor league aspect because they're not kind of lining up. Like minor league baseball is played with Major League Baseball, just in smaller markets. And I've voiced my opinion on that on the show before, but I think if the NFL, like having it in the spring, it kind of gives players that chance to kind of do the retirement thing where they can double dip where, hey, you made a roster, whatever, you get your credits. You didn't play that much. You can still stay fresh and try to get prepared to earn your credits the following year by playing in the XFL in the spring. If you get hurt, oh, well, you might have got cut anyway, you know? Like, I don't think the downside is going to be as bad. It's just going to be trying to get players to come back. They got to get big name guys. I said it last time, like I wanted to see them try to bring in big name college guys, like even going back to like Vince Young and like Denard Robinson and guys like that it's like, get guys like even Marcus Lattimore. He blew his knee out in the NFL. He was going to be one of the top guys from South Carolina when Steve Spurrier was there. I don't know if he wanted to keep playing, but like this would be a chance for some of those big name guys to really elevate the league up. And so the last thing I had today, Matt, and I know you wanted to talk about it too, was the main thing from I'm getting kind of messages on here, so hopefully that's not too loud. But the main thing that I want to talk about is the Fan Control Football League, where they're bringing my man back. And did you see that? I know this is from a couple of years ago. I think we talked about it, where he ran like against Tyreek Hill and kept up with him.
Yeah. At
like 45 or however old he is now. So he's there. He's able to run. He said he was recently timed running a 4.4 40, right?
Yes.
So that's crazy to me that a guy can go ahead, run that speed at his age. And I'm sure it's hand timed, but even with a wide receiver, the time doesn't matter. And if you're going to be like casually looking into like the Fan Control Football League, having a name like that makes a big deal. That's why I wanted to bring it up with the XFL stuff, because I think the XFL can kind of go from there and take that next jump, right? They need to have guys with big names that can kind of connect it, even if they get their shot in the NFL and maybe fall off. Like Sam Darnold, maybe give him like a rehab there. But if they don't get guys like that, and no offense to like a PJ Walker, but if you get guys like, was that the AAF? I can't remember where he even played before he went back to Carolina. But they had a bunch of guys that people didn't really hear of other than Cardell Jones, right? So, yeah. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I like the concept because you can, like, they have a voting system for the play, so you're going to have an opportunity that as you're watching the game, you can vote on what play should be run. And then obviously the more successful your play calls are, the more input you're going to have during the game to make some of those in-game decisions. Last year it was the league where Johnny Manziel played. T.O.'s playing, and I saw that he's also trying to encourage Colin Kaepernick to play. And if Cap's serious about his work out at Michigan, and he's serious about trying to get a foot back in the door, I think it's an avenue for him to go. I mean, whether he looks at the XFL or the FCF, I think getting in at any of those leagues and showing that it's not just stump speeches is going to be a good faith statement towards getting back to where he wants to be if he's serious about playing in the NFL. I mean, we know Baltimore was close to signing him and had that sabotaged with some comments by his girlfriend at the time. So who knows what's real and what isn't.
And that's where I think a player like him, even someone that's less, I guess they're trying to say he's blacklisted or whatever, but some guys that aren't as hot from the NFL where you can earn those credits, go ahead and get it. See what happens. See if you can play. And if you're playing against XFL guys and you're playing lights out like you're a superstar, like a college stud, I mean, a lot of guys could look like a man among boys, right?
Uh-huh.
One guy I'm looking at, like, say like Saquon Barkley, looks like he's always going to take off, getting injured. Like maybe not someone as big as him, but like what if another running back's in that same situation where you have guys coming in and they're able to run with it and show that they're able to just go wild, they're going to get another chance. Sometimes you might only get 3 carries in the preseason, right?
Yeah.
They put you in for 1 or 2 series, and then they're like, well, we see you practice, but in the game, it's kind of different. Some guys are practice guys, some guys are game guys. That's why I always had brought up Vince Young. I know that ship has sailed. He's going to be like 20 years out. Like he's only 5 years younger than like 5 or 6 years younger than Tom Brady, right? Maybe 8.
Yeah.
But like at that point, like if you could have got a guy like that, like he really missed out. Because if this happened 10 years ago, where he's not the best practice guy in the NFL, but he's more of a game guy, and you can get him in the XFL showing that he's just better than everybody there, then you're going to finally get him in. Same with like a guy like Terrell Pryor. Remember they always talked about him changing positions?
Yeah.
It's hard to get caught up to speed. There's no other league for you to go when you kind of just get thrown out of the league, right? If they had an XFL maybe to bounce back, like it's taken Clowney a bunch of years to get caught up, and now he's been a solid player for a good long while. So I like having it because I like watching guys that I liked in college play on Sundays, and it's kind of like, hey, I remember that guy. I just saw an article about Cooper Kupp lighting up one of the guys from Washington when they almost upset him or whatever back in college. And it's like, yeah, I remember that game. I didn't realize that was him at the time, right? So having like guys like that, even like the guys that kind of blow up, but having the XFL for the other ones that go the opposite direction, where you're big in college, what happened? How can you bounce back from that? Now you have a place to go. They haven't had one, but it has to be consistent. Like I want to see it. I want to see how it lasts. It can't only be a 1 or 2 year thing on and off. I know COVID really struck it, and that kind of hurt everything, but I want to see a league where you're able to just, go with it. But that's just me. What are your thoughts? Do you think it can be successful?
I think it can. I just think, are they willing to be patient enough to allow it to grow? I mean, I feel like there have been a lot of different leagues that have come up over the last couple of years. I mean, COVID shut down the original XFL. The AAF imploded. Like the original USFL is going to be starting here within a year or so. The original imploded because they tried to force a merger with the NFL. And I think there's all these different leagues that come up, and before they truly have a chance to take root, they're folding for financial reasons. I think if they have the finances in place, I think it gives them a solid at least starting point to allow them some success. I think for people that don't know anything about this FCF, I think one of the interesting things is it kind of follows some of the like arena type rules where you're having fewer linemen. It's more of a wide open, almost 7-on-7 style thing, except you're still playing full contact. So I think like when you look at like around our area, there's a lot of semi-pro football that's being played that's basically outdoor arena style, and I think that allows more opportunities for people to get a foot in the door.
And that's where I like having the options. The Fan Control Football League is interesting to me because I think it's going to take the next evolution of like gambling and putting it into one nice package, Matt. And so that's what I wonder with what's the basketball spinoff, like the Big Three? Is that what it is? Where they have like the 3-on-3? I could see them having like that type of thing too. Where I wonder how many guys you're going to think are still going to stay in shape, like T.O., still think they can play, give them a chance to go play. Because like even honestly, if the XFL is doing a partnership with the NFL, I guarantee if T.O. is like, hey, I'm going to try out, the NFL is going to be like, hey, we want our guys on your rosters, not T.O. They're going to kind of hint at that. Like, we don't want those guys. Get guys that are big names, like a Johnny Manziel. Give them a few chances, because that's like the type of guy, like, he's like the modern Vince Young, right? Although he had more off-the-field issues than who knows what. But he got into the league, couldn't handle it, needed a chance to rehab. Like, it didn't work out. That's what, to me, it's kind of like, man, I wish Vince Young had that chance. He didn't have all that off the field BS going on. And he was awesome in college. Like the comeback kid. Like, what if he had a place like that to go? Manziel has had it. How many chances have he got? Like the CFL and all that stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the CFL has been around. I'm glad they didn't do the merger because I would have hated if the XFL had played with CFL rules. And I know the CFL was kind of almost going to fold. So I think that rumor's kind of probably wrong. I bet the CFL was going to have to adopt to the NFL rules, which I think would have been better. Because having kind of like a minor league there is similar to like all the Latin American baseball teams, you know?
Yeah.
Where players come up and they can play. And going to Canada is probably good and it helps the sport. And who knows then, it opens up having an NFL like team maybe move to Toronto or something. I mean, they have them in every other, NBA, baseball, and hockey, right? So who knows what would be wrong having a Canadian team in the NFL. But that's pretty much all I had. Anything else you have before we hit the final bell?
No.
My final bell, Matt, is your boy, Willie Taggart, getting the DJ Durkin treatment, where they're paying, or an ex-Oregon football player is suing for $100 million, not just Willie Taggart, but the NCAA, Oregon, too, because of a kidney issue that he discovered that was happening because of workouts that were too intense. Which
an hour of push-ups and up-downs.
Iowa had that, though. Iowa had the same issue, and Maryland had that same issue, where it's like working out. I mean, the Maryland guy actually died. So you have that. The Iowa one, how many were hospitalized back in the day? It was like 9 or something.
Yeah. Which
is crazy because that's the trainer that Urban Meyer hired in Jacksonville. So it's like...
Yeah.
Which I saw a mock draft that had the Jacksonville taking like every round they took a player from Michigan. I'm like, that would never happen, ESPN. I think it was ESPN or CBS. I'm like, why would one team just pick every Michigan guy that's up there? Like, we're going to start with Hutchinson, going to take Dax Hill in the second, and we're going to keep going. I get a Hassan Haskins in there somewhere. It's like we watched the Big Ten Championship game. We really like that team. We're just going to bring them down to Jacksonville.
That team would beat the Jaguars, so they're going to upgrade every position.
They're just going to bring that team down. They're going to say, hey, and then wouldn't it be funny if the next year they hired Harbaugh? It's the reverse Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier got the job first and brought his guys in. Jacksonville's going to bring the guys in first and then bring the coach down. See if it works out for him. But what do you think about that? I mean... I would think it's going to get thrown out, but I mean, he initially sued them for $11.5 million.
But didn't he win that suit, or was that one thrown out too?
That's what I don't know. They kept amending it following discovery, where it increased from $6 to $20 million, then to $100 in punitive damages. So I don't think it actually finished. I think he just keeps amending it, and I'm guessing. So I'm guessing what's happening is he's adding teammates in or something, because it says something like several student athletes vomited, passed out, and collapsed during workouts. So you wonder if he didn't have a case at first, but if he brings in 3 players, it says there were 3 players that were hospitalized as a result of the workouts with the rhombolytis or whatever it's called.
The rhabdo.
Yeah, I don't even know how to pronounce it. I just know that that's the exact same thing Iowa had. Remember?
Yep.
I thought they had more than 3, though. I thought it was like 6 or 9. Let me look that up real quick. But as a coach, like you would have to think that that's not working, right?
You would have, or your program is just in really bad shape.
Oh,
like that you're trying to force people to quit. You're just like, we're just going to do push-ups until we get 10 guys out of here.
I was worried that I was like slandering Iowa by saying they had 6 or 9.
No,
they had 13, Matt.
Yes, I knew it was. I knew it was up there.
I thought it was like 9, but 13's even worse. Where it's like a weird muscle disorder. It's from 2011, which is a year they went. Wasn't that like 2009 was one of the years they went almost undefeated, right? I'm trying to think of when, because Iowa usually has a good run every 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah, they recover from their rhabdo, and then they're like, oh, yeah, we're really good.
Yeah, those guys, they just keep. Well, honestly, how it works is you get a line, like an offensive line class. You redshirt a bunch of them. Some of them might be sophomores or whatever, and you try to ride it out for 3 or 4 years. It's basically the Wisconsin thing, where if you can get the line together, and then you can get the rest of them to kind of play together. Now, 2011 they went 7-6, so 2009 was the 11-win season. And then after that, they kind of got off their stride because it had been 11, 10, 10, a couple of years, 9, then 11, then 8. Then they kind of went through that downhill with the Rhabdo stuff. And now they're back, 2015, and of course this year. And there was another one mixed in where they went, ended up second in the division. So they didn't really win it those other years. But that's the one thing where if this opens up, because I don't know what year. I mean, it's been a year since Willie Taggart was there. Willie Taggart was only there for 1 year, right?
One or two.
Didn't he leave right away?
He left really quick.
So that's my thought. If that opens up, then Iowa, what's stopping the Iowa players from suing? Or even more Maryland players from coming back? So that's something to keep an eye on. Did you have anything else?
Or the Jacksonville players from suing Urban.
Well, that's when he kicked them. He kicked the kicker, right?
Yeah, he said, I'll kick you if I won.
I don't miss my kicks is what he should have said. He needs to be writing for him. Let's see what else. Anything else you have for the final bell?
No, I do not.
I only had one other thing I just saw that was it Grambling that cut their entire volleyball team?
Yes.
Which I still saw. It's Tom Izzo, of course. I was trying to think, which coach did I see complaining about it today? Tom Izzo's complaining about the transfer portal because he runs the Iowa system, Matt, where he brings players in, keeps them from going to the NBA. Who knows how he does it? Like Michigan's always getting guys declaring for the NBA and leaving early. Tom Izzo's like once they get there, he like doesn't let them leave. I don't know how he has that hold on them, but like no other program, like out of the big blue bloods, if you consider them one of them. Like Duke, UNC, I guess UNC's program had a bunch of old athletes this year, and I think that was just because of COVID and the way things worked out with the coaching change. So it was a fluke that they went on their run. I also think it was a fluke that they were an 8 seed because that team was very talented, and they had a lot of upperclassmen. So coming next year, I wonder how they'll look because I would think that a bunch of them would leave. You're not going to get the Tom Izzo where you're going to have 5 fifth-year seniors out there playing. So he's complaining about it again because guys don't want to wait in his system anymore. Think about it. If all your buddies, like you played against in high school on the AAU travel team, they're already in the NBA, and Tom Izzo's telling you, 1 more year, you'll be ready. You have to be like, why did I come here? And if you're a new coach, like this guy, maybe as a woman, I don't know. But if you're coming in and you're looking at that, and I say, the first thing that I'm going to look at is say, hey, what are you going to do for me? You know? And if you're taking over a program that had 3 wins, why not cut the whole team? Because then you're going to have to like coach them up. Like, let's say if you transfer from another program, because most coaches flip programs now. They're not going to hire you as like a nobody. You're either going to get brought up internally or you're going to get poached from another school. And even if you're at a lower level, at least those people know your system. And if you can bring in like 5 or 6 of them, I don't know how many people are on a volleyball team, but let's do basketball numbers. Like if I'm a basketball coach coming up and I come to a program that had 3 wins or something, I'm going to say like, hey, all you guys, your positions are open. Like I'm cutting all your scholarships right now. I'm going to bring in the 4 or 5 guys. Like what was the program? St. Peter's, where a lot of their guys entered the transfer portal after he went to, did he go to Seton Hall?
Yeah, he went back to his alma mater.
Yeah, so now I'm sure he has a chance to bring a couple of those guys. He's probably not going to bring all of them, but at least he knows that they can make a deep run in the NCAA tournament, and that experience is very important. That's why I think Michigan's been having their run. Guys, I saw a percentage where it was like 70% of the Big Ten's wins were like guys with experience, and Michigan was like leading the pack. Because if you're in the making a deep run of the tournament every other year, guess what? Your team's going to have experience every tournament because those guys are going to have some type of like run in them, right? So that's where I think if you're the coach and you're going to take on a bunch of perennial losers, for lack of a better word, Matt, why not just say, I'm going to bring my own guys in and we're going to be winners?
I'm gonna cut my entire team. We're starting over.
It's not his team, though.
Nothing says NIL. Like, we're starting fresh.
Do you have a bunch of players that probably are already thinking about transferring, and you come in and the old coaches, maybe they're old, maybe they were just like lackadaisical, who knows? And then you're going to come in and you're going to say, well, we got to run my system. We're going to be working out hard. The players are already grumbling and complaining. Better just to start new and say, like, well, I know these other 5 guys want to be here. Or girls. Was it a boy or a girl team? I guess it doesn't really matter because it's going to go the same for both. So you come in there and you say, this is it. This is what I want. How do you guys feel? And if they walk out, Matt, you just cut them. All right, well, good luck going forward. If you need like a reference, let me know. But I don't really know you, and I don't think your old coach is going to give you a reference either. So that's my final bell. You got anything else?
Nope. Check out southboundsports.com.
Yep. Check that out. Got some draft stuff coming up, some big stuff coming up. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.